the congregation here. They represented us for a number of years, and he must be doing a good job, or I wouldn't invite him to speak to you.
And you're building a building.
And we're building a building. And so, anyway, Eric has been many years. He'll just take a few minutes when I'm done talking. Tell us about yourself.
Okay.
It's been many years in this business, and but we have a special connection. He's also an Aggie, and I'm an Aggie. So we both went to UC Davis. He was there about, I don't know, 15 years after I was.
Only a few years.
Only a few years. But the interesting thing is we studied the same thing. So he was a double major in international relations and economics. But his economics was far more mathematical than mine. So he actually had to earn his econ degree, whereas mine was somehow I got it. Anyways, they have a financial services firm, advisory firm here in Sacramento, and obviously a number of clients, and they manage quite a bit of money, including the portfolio of this church congregation. So don't worry, he's going to speak directly to where you are. I told him, you're not going to be talking to Wall Street, you're talking to Main Street tonight. But he's quite well able to answer your questions. So be thinking about something you want to ask him, because we're going to save a good amount of time just to answer questions, okay? So anyways, why don't you go finish the story about you, and then go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here. I think we've been doing it for you guys for about...
So you have...
I can put it on.
Yeah. Some of us are hard of hearing.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you got it. Okay. So.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Make it go the other way.
Like that.
Something like that on the outside. That flips too. No, I don't like that
like
either.
this, yeah,
There you go. I like that better.
That worked?
Uh-huh. And then
turn
just
this on.
turn that on. Now you're good.
Can you hear me? No, not yet? Oh, there we go. All right. Well, thank you for having me. My name's Eric Solis. That's my wife, Araceli Solis. I've been helping clients, doing this for about 30 years. I graduated from Davis in '94. And I think I've been working for the church for about 6, 7, or 8 years, something like 17? Yeah, wow. Time flies when you're having fun. All right. So originally I'm from El Salvador. My family and I moved here when I was 11 years old, back in 1980. Don't do the math, please. We were escaping kind of the stuff that was going on down in El Salvador. My parents were teachers, so we had family here, and so there's a huge kind of group of us that live in Sacramento. Went to school here in the different high schools, community college at Sac City College, and then transferred to UC Davis, where I got degrees and graduated in 1994. And at the end of '94, so I started my career with Prudential Securities back in '95, and never really left the firms, but the firms changed names. Right? It was Prudential, then Wachovia, then Wells Fargo, and then 3 years ago, we went independent. Now we own First Summit Wealth Management, and our office is at University Avenue. My wife has a similar story. Her parents are from Mexico. Her dad was a bracero. They would come here and work in farms, and she came to the States in '88. Her dad brought kind of everybody to San Diego, so she moved to San Diego with her family. She also went to UC Davis. Graduated in '99. Got a degree in human development. We got married in 2000. Had kids in 2002, and about when we had our second child, she was working. And we made a decision for her to take care of the family, because I think it was important for us to have a mom in the house with the kids. So she worked. I got the easy job, for sure, because I worked, but she took care of the kids. We had a third kid, and when Nathan was born, Nathan, our third, was 6 and going to school, she wanted to go back into the workforce, and at that time our practice was growing. So then she joined me in the practice, kind of helping us manage our operations. And in 2017, she got fully licensed, so now we're both advisors, and we're continuing to kind of let our kids, our kids are growing up, and so we're enjoying each other's time. So we tend to have lunch 3 or 4 times a week together, and we say that, we spend, a lot of time together, which is great. We really enjoy it. So that's my story. Like I said, we've been doing this for a while. So what I'm going to cover today is just some basic things about retirement, the way you should be thinking about retirement, and then I'll talk a little bit about how you should be thinking about. So the first part is retirement is budgeting, thinking about kind of how you should be thinking about the spending part of it. Then I'll talk a little bit about how you should be thinking about your portfolios, if you will, once you've saved, how you should be thinking about that. I'll also cover a little bit about Social Security, because that's a big part of a lot of people's retirement income when they get there. And then save your, hopefully you have a lot of questions. I hope this is more of a dialogue rather than me talking at you. So we'll get started, okay? So as you think about your retirement equation, right, and I'll kind of move this way so you can see, there are things in life we can have some control over, some things that we have total control over, and there's things that we have no control over. I think God laughs every time we plan. But the things that you have total control over is how much you spend and how much you save. Right? Like learning how to budget and putting money away for the future is important. You have total control how your money is invested too. Right? Some people don't invest and keep it in cash, so the money doesn't grow. Others take too much risk and lose money. So having a good sense of those two things are important, right? Because those are the things you have control over. There are things they have some control over, right? There's some things that if we take care of ourselves and eat well, we're going to live a long time, right? If we don't, smoke, drink, do things like that, you may not live that long. We can also get ourselves trained better so we can earn more money so we have more savings, right? And so that's part of some of the things you have control over. And there's things that are completely out of our control, right? And sometimes I think people focus on the things trying to control, I know I do sometimes, that I try to control the things I know I don't have control, like my children sometimes, right? The markets, we focus too much on trying to take too much risk and not really understanding that. That's so knowing how to manage those things is important. And then there's taxes. There's a lot of laws and things that change that we have no control over. So I think what's important is focusing on this equation is what are the things that you can control and have some control and the things that you don't, right? Let's talk a little bit about how long you should be planning for. This is a graph of just studies that have shown how long we're going to live in retirement, right? The average woman, if you're healthy, has a 73% chance that they're going to live to 85. A man who's healthy has a 64% chance to live into 85. And as you can see, right, the reason I'm pointing this out is if you retire at 65 and you have a high probability that you're going to live into 85 or 90, you've got a 20 to 25 years that you've got to have money to live in retirement, right? So it's important what you do before that to get to a comfortable retirement. Another way to think about sort of this retirement equation is how much income needs to be replaced in your retirement years. And that kind of depends on sort of where you're at. This is kind of looking at averages of people that are retiring and their income and how much income needs to be replaced. So just to give you an example of what this shows, and I'll give this to you guys so you can have it too and pass it along so people can kind of really dive into it. But if you're making $60,000 a year, you're going to need to just maintain your lifestyle, you're going to need to have 86% of that income to maintain it. Now, everybody kind of spends differently in retirement, but 86% to just replace that income. Some of that will come from Social Security. That's the green graph. So if you're making that money, 42 comes from Social Security, right? Most of us work, paying Social Security. But 43% will have to come from your own efforts, saving into 401ks, saving in a savings account. So the things you can control, what you spend and how much you save, that's the part that you're responsible for. People sometimes ask me, how much should I be saving? There's no, right, it depends on your age, it depends how much you're going to spend in retirement. But these are some really good rules of thumb, depending on your age, right? And I'll show you some other, there's other slides here that will kind of impact this. But if you're young, you need to start. And if you're young, it's like 25, and you plan on retiring at 65, you have 40 years to save. So if you stay consistent, you won't have, if you do it for a long time, you have, you end up having to need to save a little less. But if you're behind, sort of where your income is and your age, you need to be increasing your savings. So the average, sort of someone that's 35, earning 60, and hasn't really started to save for retirement, sort of the average is you need to be thinking about putting 13% away of what you have, or your income currently, into different vehicles, okay? So another good sort of checkpoint to kind of check, am I behind? Am I on track? Am I, ahead of where I should be? Because people ask me, where am I relative to my peers? So it's a good way to check yourself. Where are you at? So it's a great table, kind of shows sort of averages again about sort of people earning different incomes in different ages. So someone that's making $60,000 a year and is 30, to be on track to replace their income, they need to have $50,000 in savings. For someone that's 50, they should be at $255,000. And I'm just looking at that $60,000 a year income individual, right? So when you get to 65, and if you've made that, you should have about $500,000 in savings to be able to maintain your lifestyle or replace your income in your retirement years, right? At 65, you're likely going to live to age 85 to 90, so that's 25 years. Good, and that's a good checkpoint. This one is, I think I went backwards. There we go. So let me before I show this, I'm going to do a little exercise. So there are two 25-year-olds, and I want you guys to raise your hands. There are two 25-year-olds, okay? And the first 25-year-old saves $250 a month for 10 years. That's $30,000. The second 25-year-old says, I can't afford to save. I have this, I need to get an iPhone, I need to get a better car, right? And they wait until they're 35 to start saving, and they start saving the exact same amount, but they save it for 30 years till they're 65. When they both get to 65, again, one saved it for 10 years, the other one saved it for 30 years. Who has more money? I didn't even, but they only saved $30,000. And the other one saved $90,000. You guys are good. You didn't need me here. But, I mean, it's pretty incredible, right? The person that saved $30,000 had $367,000. The person that saved $90,000 had $317,000. That's, the effect of starting early, right? Making choices early on of, right, sacrificing to save for retirement. The person that saved that same amount through that whole 40 years had $685,000. So just that compounding effect is tremendous. Now, the person that was consistently saving but chose not to invest and just leave it in cash had the least amount of money, right? So it's important to start early, right? It's important to do it the whole time, but it's also important to make sure that you're investing properly. This one just shows if, a lot of people say, I can't afford to do it now, right? You should, do something. Whether it's $25 a month, whatever you can afford, this shows just starting, but then increasing it every time. Every time a client gets a raise, one of the conversations I have is how much of that are you going to put away towards your retirement versus you get a raise and you go, I need a new outfit, I need a new car, I need a new this, and then you end up spending more than your raise, right? But if you're consistently taking that and increasing the amount you save, this shows the person that escalates their savings, especially even though they start early, they end up kind of accumulating more dollars over time. So it's just important to, one, get started, and two, as you get raises, have that thought of how much of this am I putting towards my future, and how much. It's okay to, if you're working hard and earning more, to take care of yourselves, but it's also to take care of yourselves for later years. So this shows sort of the importance of taking advantage of your employers. Who here has 401ks? Okay, right? The importance of taking advantage of this, or taking advantage of those type of vehicles, is the benefit of the tax-deferred growth. The blue shows if you didn't take advantage of a 401k or a tax-deferred vehicle, because you're paying taxes on dividends, interest, capital gains, and so you're giving the government money every year, right? Versus putting it into those vehicles where you're not for the time being. And so if you do that, and that just shows 100,000 growing for 30 years, and then at the end, yes, you pay tax. But even after you pay the tax, you end up with more dollars than if you just didn't save in a 401k or a tax-deferred vehicle. So taking advantage of that is really important. That's where you have some control, right, of where you can put money away. Now, we've talked about retirement and putting money away for the long term. But I think I'd be not doing my job if I didn't tell you that you also need to think about the short-term needs. All of us have spending shocks, whether it's, tires need to be replaced, or air conditioning goes out, or you have a health. You need to first, and I'll kind of prioritize it for you, but you need to think about the emergency fund that you need to have. A lot of times people jump on their 401ks, and then it has a really negative impact on your retirement. So building an emergency fund is really, really important. And that should be kind of one of the first things you should think about. And this kind of just shows sort of how much because people ask me, how much should I have in my emergency fund? It kind of really depends on your income and sort of the type of job you have. But on average, you should have probably 4 to 12 weeks of your income in an emergency fund just in case. That way you're not getting into debt with credit cards or drawing on your 401k through loans and paying taxes and having a negative impact on your retirement. So kind of prioritizing, where should I put my income, right? You should first make sure that you have the emergency fund, right? Like, again, 4 to 10 weeks, 12 weeks of your pay. The next thing you should do, in my recommendation, is if you have 401ks, and some of you raise your hands, you might know this or not, how many of those 401k employers give you a match? Right? Like, you should, at minimum, get to that number. Maximize your match. Because that's free money. It's an automatic return, right, on your money. You're getting a tax deduction, so you're saving some taxes. It's going to grow tax deferred, so it's going to grow some more, and then your employer is giving you some money. So at minimum, you should do that. You can maximize it, but I wouldn't maximize it until you've gotten rid of all your high-interest credit card debt. Like, when people say, should I pay my high-interest credit card debt first or add to my 401k? Add to your 401k up until your match, because that's free money, right? And sometimes they're matching it dollar for dollar on the first 3%. Sometimes 50 cents on the dollar on the first 3%. That's a huge return on your money. So, do that first and then get rid of all your high interest credit card debt. Then after you've done that, you should put money away in your health savings plans. We're all, going to need and have medical expenses. Not all employers offer health savings accounts, but if they do, you should put money in there so that you have that. There's a huge tax advantage to that because you get the tax deduction when you put it in, and if it's spent on qualified healthcare expenses, it comes out tax-free. So you save some tax dollars there, right? Once you've maxed that out, then you begin to increase your 401ks to the max. 401k maxes out at about $24,500 a year, so you can put up to that much. And if you're over 50, you can do another $8,000 into your 401k, right? And then do that first before you start thinking about paying your mortgage down. Now, people sometimes come into my office and go, I'm paying extra on the mortgage, but I'm not putting anything in my 401k. I go, why are you doing that? Because people have told me I should pay my house off, right? And I go, well, you're leaving money on the table because you're not getting the match. That's like automatic return. So get that first, right? And not until you've done 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, so you should think about maybe paying the lower interest debt. Maybe your mortgage, maybe a car loan, things like that. But you got to think about, also saving, and once you've done that, maybe save in IRAs and taxable accounts. But it should be emergency fund first, then your employer match, then your high credit card interest, then it's the addition to your 401k or health savings accounts. So let me talk about the different type of accounts and sort of how they impact sort of taxes and so forth. The 401k, I think we talked a little bit about that. The contributions to your 401k are pre-tax, so which means that you're not paying taxes on the income. So if you take $1, if you take it home, you're taking probably 80 cents, maybe 70 cents, depending on your income level. If you put it in the 401k pre-tax, you get to put the whole dollar in to your 401k. So you save 30 cents, 20 to 30 cents, right? Those are the 401k accounts, right? So, and then getting the match on top of that, right? If the employer matches. Then there's taxable accounts. What are taxable accounts? Savings, like regular savings or checking account. You could also do brokerage accounts. That's when you're investing in mutual funds or stocks and bonds that are taxable every year. Then you have Roth 401ks. The people that have 401ks, do you guys have Roth inside your 401ks? Do you know? So the difference between the pre-tax 401k and the Roth 401k is that one puts in the money before tax, and the other one, you're paying taxes first, and then it goes into your 401k. There is a benefit to doing that, in that the growth in the Roth 401k is going to grow tax deferred, but when it comes out tax-free. And so part of what you want to think about is, what will my tax rate be, or try to manage as best you can the tax rate in retirement. So if you have a little bit of both, you're going to have some income that will be tax-free, the Roth, and some that's taxable, because the 401k that's pre-tax and tax-deferred will get taxed at the end. And let me go back a few slides to kind of illustrate that a little bit. We talked about this, right? This is the pre-tax and the taxes you pay when you take it out. But if you had some Roth, some of that Roth would be tax-free. So all the growth that's been happening in that is tax-free. So having a little bit of both is helpful, in my opinion. So we talked about accounts, sort of budgeting a little bit. Now that you are set to go put money in accounts, 401ks, how should you be investing that money, right? There's 3 buckets the way I look at how I help clients as we're planning for them. And so you have bucket 1, that's your emergency fund. Do not go buy Bitcoin. Do not go buy something super risky with your emergency fund. It should stay stable, even if it doesn't earn very much. It needs to be protected. Then there's intermediate sort of goals. There may be a need for college, or your retirement is getting closer, is that should be probably invested in a combination of stocks and bonds, but not too risky. And then you have long-term. And if you're young and planning for retirement, you should be thinking of that more growth, more stocks. And I'll kind of talk to you a little bit about sort of the way you should be thinking about how you should be investing. But you have the 3 buckets. Talk a little bit about the market here. So this is, who knows what the S&P 500 is? Some of you, right? The S&P 500 is 500 companies, and they're all publicly traded, and companies like GE, Johnson & Johnson, Microsoft, kind of know them all, right? You see them, you buy them. If you go to a grocery store, you can kind of look at who makes it, and some of those companies, a lot of those are publicly traded. Most of them are in the S&P 500. And what this shows you is what the S&P 500 is, an index, and it shows you what it's done every year since 1980. So each bar and dot is that 1 year. The red dot represents where the market was at its lowest point from January 1st. And the bar shows you where the market finished on December 31st. So if you look at 1980, the first one, from January to some point in that middle of the year, the market was negative 17% from January 1st. So if you had $1, at some point that dollar was worth 83 cents. But if you kept it invested by the end of the year, $1 was worth $1.26. Okay? There's never been a year, if you've watched the S&P 500, where the market was not negative at some point in that year, right? It didn't go January 1st and then straight up. It went January 1st and went down, and then 35 out of those 46 years, it finished positive, right? So the concept here is to think about not panicking out of the market, right? Staying invested, being well diversified. Because if you don't, here's what happens. This shows you being fully invested from 2006 to 2025. It's the S&P 500 being invested. If you stayed fully invested and didn't panic out of the market, you'd have averaged 11%, and that $10,000 would be $80,000. If you panicked in one of those dots, if you panicked and missed 10 of the best days, so you got out and didn't get back in, because if I go back to this graph, not only did the market recover from those red dots, it finished much higher, and that's where the recovery days come in, right? Pretty much right after those red dots. So if you missed 10 of those best days, your return goes to 6.6%. Your 10,000 grows to 35. If you missed 20 of those recovery days, it goes down to 3.8%, and it's only 21,000. What's interesting or scary, and this is why I tell clients, make sure you're properly diversified and don't panic out, because if you're missing more than 40 of those best recovery days, you're actually negative, right? Because you didn't get back in and didn't see the recovery, because 100% of the time, it ended up higher than those red dots. And this is one of the things we just can't, going back to the what can you control and what you can't control, right? Staying invested is really important. Now, this shows the average return of different kind of mixes of portfolios over 1-year period, 5-year periods, 10-year periods, and 20-year periods. Why I'm showing you this is, yes, if you stay 100% invested in stocks, you'll see a lot of volatility. That's the blue, the one that says negative 37 and up 52. But if you look at a 20-year period, and this is rolling 20-year period, so it's looking at every 20-year period, going back to, I forget, I'm not sure how long it goes back, but it's looking at different 20-year periods. 50? Yeah, 1950? There's never been a 20-year period where being 100% invested gave you a negative return. It's been somewhere between 6 and 15%. So 1-year periods could be very volatile. 5-year periods, some volatility, but as you extend that time horizon, right, there's never been a negative return. So having, again, those 3 buckets, the cash for emergency, the intermediate, and the longer term, that's how you begin to manage sort of one of those things where we can't really have 100% control. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about Social Security. Actually, before I do this, let me show you I'm going to show you another way to think about risk. And I'll come back to Social Security. So this kind of, we use this in how we manage clients' portfolios, because our conversations go around, when do you think you're going to need the money and how long you're going to need this money for, right? And so that helps us determine really what level of risk you should be at in your portfolio. This is a graph, kind of shows risk and return and the mix of investment you should have. So if you wanted to be very low risk, you'll have less return. That's the left one. And you'll have most of your money in fixed income, savings, but you should have a little bit of stock. That's giving you the lowest risk, but the lowest return, right? And you got to be comfortable with that. As you go to the right, it's giving you a little bit more return, but you're taking more risks. You should be conscious about the level of risk that you're taking. So the one that's farthest to the right has the most stock. It's about 93% in stock, and a little bit of cash. So as you're thinking about where should I put my money, think about how long you have to retirement. And one of the things that we do with clients is as you get closer to retirement age, we're moving that risk down. So if you're getting closer to retirement, you should be further to the left. If you're young and got 20, 30 years to retirement, you should be moving to the right, right? Another way to think about it, if the market is dropping, remember that dot that you see that I showed you? And people kind of have counterintuitive. People always call me, I always kind of know when the market is either at the top or at the bottom. And here's how I know. When clients start calling me and asking me, should I invest in, my neighbor told me about a stock, and what about AI or what about tech? I go, I think the market's going to be at the top right now because everybody's looking to take more risk, because everybody is sort of talking about it and they feel like they're going to miss out on something, right? And so then they sometimes don't understand the risk. And so I go, probably not. The market's at the top. And then I know when the market is at the bottom. Because the calls I get when the market's at the bottom is, I need to get out. I need to sell everything. I can't afford to lose any more money. Right? And that's when the dot is probably at its bottom point. That's when I go, hey, we should be moving up the graph when you're calling me to sell. And I should be moving down the graph when you're calling me to buy Bitcoin or this AI stock that I heard about, or something that kind of makes us think that we're going to miss out on something. Oh, let me see, get back to my other. Social Security. So I'll explain it real briefly. This kind of can get very, there's a lot of detail on Social Security, but I'm going to do just my best to just be very brief about it and give you as much information as I can in a short period of time. But so we're all putting into Social Security. Most of us have what's called the full retirement age of 67. Now, some people say, I can take it at 62, and so I'm going to start taking it. Well, what I want you to keep in mind is that if you do take it at 62, you're actually getting a penalty of about 30%. For every year that you take it earlier than 67, Social Security is being reduced, the benefit is being reduced by 6% every year. Okay? You could take it as early as 62, but you're getting 30% less than the amount that you would get at 67. If you delay it to your age 70, that benefit is increasing by 8% every year you wait. And it'll be 24% more than if you if you took it at 67 for the rest of your life. And then if your birth year is prior to age 60, just keep in mind retirement, some of you might be, but the full retirement age is reduced a few months. So it's not necessarily 67, it could be 66 and 4 months, 66 and 6 months, and so forth, okay? So think about your full retirement age, and then people go, well, Social Security's not gonna be there. Well, there's maybe, right, the government, but I don't think they've done kind of, keep this in mind, Social Security's, there's no big pot of money that's Social Security. Where Social Security, how Social Security gets paid is by all of us that are working, right? They collect the money and then they distribute it. So if the government did nothing, by 2034, it's still going to be about 81% fully funded. And if you go to 2099, it's still about 74% funded. So because all of us who are continuing to work are paying into it and getting distributed. So I wouldn't, and most of the voting bloc, if they did try to reduce benefits or eliminate deficits, are those people receiving it. So politicians are not likely going to, right, vote themselves out of office by doing that. So, but as you think, if we take that away, sort of the whether it's going to be fully funded or not, the way I think of Social Security is sort of, do I take it at 62 or do I wait till age 70? It really depends on what you think your longevity is going to be. There is a break-even point, right? If you don't have a longevity in your family, you may be better off taking it at 62. The break-even point of 62, if you take it at 62, the break-even point is about 77. So if you take it at 62 and you versus 67, you would break even at 77. So if you think you might not live beyond 77, you would have been better off taking it earlier. But, like I said, longevity, we kind of saw that graph. Most of us are going to live probably longer than that. So you might be better off waiting. Now, there's another break-even point of if you took it at 67 versus age 70, that break-even point of waiting is around 81. So do I take it at 67 or do I take it at age 70? My math tells me that if you're going to live less than 81, you take it before. But if you think you're going to live longer, you should wait. Right? Sort of that break-even point of when you should take Social Security. So the way, again, this is kind of what I was talking about, a little bit of where the break-even points are for Social Security. Right? For someone that's 62, the break-even, or taking it 62 versus 67, break-even point is 67, and the break-even point between 67 and 70 is 81. So, should you think about sort of this is the decision tree of how should I claim Social Security, right? One thing to remember about Social Security too is that if you take it before you have full retirement age. If you're working and you earn more than $24,000, the income above the $24,000 will have a negative. They'll deduct $2 for every dollar you earn in Social Security. So if you're still working, don't take it, right? Because it's going to get penalized pretty heavily. Then you go, do I need it, right? Do I have any other sources of income? This is where it becomes important as you're thinking about your retirement math or equation, right? Is if you've saved, you may not need to take it because you have other sources of income, and then you can wait to get the maximum benefit you can out of Social Security, right? So then you go beyond that, do I think in my genes I have a likelihood of living beyond 77? And if you're thinking you're going to live beyond 77, you wait. And then it's the next question is, if you're thinking you're going to live until you're beyond 81 and you want to maximize the benefit of Social Security, you should wait till age 70. So that's why it's important as you look at your retirement equation is save so you can have, right, 42% of retirement will be dependent on what you do, because Social Security only covers a small part. But that also gives you options about how you maximize the benefit of Social Security. Right, so it's sort of, again, going back to the things that you can control, the things that you have some control over, and the things we have no control over, right? And I think that covers all of my slides. Thank you for having me. Now we can turn it to questions, conversations. Yes, ma'am.
A high-interest credit card.
Say that again. Say that again.
I have a question about paying off a high-interest credit card.
Uh-huh.
Is there harm in closing out the account with a goal to pay it off, say, in 3 years? Am I doing any harm by doing that?
Closing
It
it-
also has a high annual fee, is what it is.
Closing it after you paid it off?
No, close it and then continue paying on it to pay the balance out.
Yeah, I don't see it. So closing it would remove the temptation to add more debt to
Yep.
it. Okay, because what I've seen is when people go, I'm going to consolidate debt by maybe getting a line of credit or equity line of credit, and those are all good techniques to do. Because what you want to do is find debt that has the lowest interest rate that's available to you, right? So you don't end up with high debt. But debt can be tempting and can cost you to, because I've seen it happen. It's like people consolidate their debt. They say, I'm going to pay it off. And then before they know it, they have another credit card and another credit card and another credit card. And so they're back in the same hole they were trying to get out of. So closing it is important, right? If, sort of that discipline of not creating more debt. So, but it's not
Yes.
going to have a negative, it should not have a negative impact if you close it so that that temptation's not there.
Yeah.
And then just be disciplined to pay it off.
Yes, that's the
Yeah.
idea. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And since I bought the house, I've been making higher payments.
Yeah.
I also bought a car 2 months ago. If I take that money, that extra money I'm paying down my mortgage on, and put it towards the car, I can cut the amount of time that I'm paying for that car literally in half.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure which way I should go. Should I,
Do you know the interest rate on those two?
on the house, 2.25.
Okay, and on the car?
On the car, it's 5.6.
So are you maxing out your 401k?
My 401, I've been retired for
Oh, so you're
15
okay, you're
years.
retired. So you're not saving in a 401k right now. So
Right. My 401k has only dropped about 3% the value It's only dropped about
'Cause of the market.
3% in the last 15 years, and I've been taking 10,000 a year out.
Okay, yeah, it's great.
So it's doing pretty, and I have no credit card debt.
That's great. So what I would tell you is pay as much as you can on the higher interest rate debt first before you pay debt that's at 2% or 2, whatever. It sounds like you got the mortgage at about the right time,
Right.
right? They don't sell those 2.5% mortgages anymore. So I would reduce the payment on your house and pay the car off as quickly as you can. Okay. Now, you have kids?
My kids are gone, yeah.
Okay. Well, they're going to inherit that house at some point, possibly.
Yes.
And what I would say is make the minimum amount payment on your mortgage, just the minimum. Okay? Because eventually that house gets left, and they'll get it whether there's a little mortgage or a big mortgage on the house. Okay? And I'd rather see you kind of be more comfortable enjoying your retirement than at this point accelerating any debt payment,
I
right?
also like to keep about $10,000 in our
Yeah.
savings account for emergencies.
Yeah, that's more important. One of the things we tell our clients is it's great if you're trying to pay your mortgage off, but once you've paid it off, or if you're accelerating the payment, keep this in mind, is that when you do that, that's money is harder to get out. Right? The only way to get money out of a house is by another refinancing or another, HELOC. So having savings, that emergency fund, access to funds, gives you more options than paying your house quicker.
For me, being a single person, I found it was easier for me to pay my car off because I can write off the interest of my house, but I can't a car.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I can't write off the interest of my car,
Yeah.
so I paid that off first, and I can write off the interest.
Correct,
of my
yeah.
house.
Yeah, so paying your car off, and which I think you're talking about is the interest on a house has a tax benefit because you can use that interest to reduce your taxable income, whereas the interest in a car loan is not. So paying your car off is much better, right, from that perspective too. Thank you for that. Depends on the income because of the tax bill. I think the standard deduction is like $16,000. So, where it really becomes, so you either get a standard deduction or you itemize. You don't get both. And what you itemize are things like your mortgage interest, if you have children, if you have medical expenses, and sometimes those itemized deductions are not bigger than your standard deduction. So in that case, the interest rate on your mortgage doesn't really give you any benefits, right? Because you're using the standard deduction versus the itemized deduction. This year, or for the next 3 years, if your income is below 175, I think, you get an addition, and you're over 65, you get an extra $6,000 on your standard deduction. That's that tax bill that was passed. So that, and part of that is a way for your Social Security not to be taxed, right? Because Social Security could get taxed depending on your income levels.
You're saying you're not really saving money then if you're not getting the itemized deduction, if you're not making it. So you might.
Well, you are because your standard deduction is greater, right, than your itemized deductions. I'll give a plug to the church for a second. There's a way to give to the church, by the way, Something called, it's a qualified charitable distribution. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. Yeah, it's if you're over 70 and a half and you have an IRA and you have required IRA distributions, required minimum distributions, if you take part of your required minimum distribution and you give it directly to the church, it's what they call a above the line deduction. So it doesn't even show up on your income, right? And you can still get the standard deduction. The difference is that when you give to the church, you get to, this goes back to the itemized deduction part, is that one of the things that you can itemize is charitable giving. And so if your charitable giving and your mortgage interest and some of those don't get you above the standard deduction, good for you, you gave to charity, but you didn't get the tax benefit because your itemized deductions were not as great as the standard deduction. Okay, but if you are getting a required minimum distribution, that's someone that's over 70 and a half, if you gave it from your IRA directly to the church, not only does that reduce your taxable income, but you also get the standard deduction, so you get both. That only applies if you're over 70 and a half. Correct. Yeah.
I have a question regarding the S&P 500 companies.
The what? Okay,
The S&P 500
yeah. Mhm.
companies, are those qualifications to be in the S&P 500? Do they fluctuate from year to year or decade to decade?
It's not year to year, but so Standard & Poor's is a company that sort of gets a lot, kind of follows those companies and they index them. So, and they have a committee, and sometimes they will sometimes add companies and take away companies. Like Google was not part, when Google's only been around for like 15, 20 years, right? So, but now Google's part of the Standard & Poor's. So they'll take companies that are, sort of established, very liquid in the market, and are sort of in our everyday consumers. They will add them to the S&P 500, but then they'll take companies away, right? There's been companies that have been around for a long time that are no longer around, that have been removed from the S&P 500, right? So it's sort of, they reshuffle it from time to time.
So are the majority of safe investments, would you say, in like the top 10% of the S&P 500, or they just totally fluctuate around the whole 500?
Well, I would say they're all the blue chip big companies, but there's not like the top 10% of the 500, okay? I would say they're all about equal, and that's why you diversify and you get someone like me to make sure that we're, helping you choose the right investments.
What are the benefits or cons of a HELOC?
Of a
HELOC.
HELOC. So a HELOC, just so I give you a little background, HELOC is a home equity line of credit. So it's using the equity in your house sort of as access to cash. So, so some of the pros is that typically it's a lower interest rate than a credit card, right? Sometimes it's tax deductible if you've used it to improve your house. Some of the cons, I think it becomes kind of one of those easy to get access. The problem I've seen is that people use their homes as their bank account, right? And so again, it's that temptation of, people, and this happened during you probably all remember the 2008 housing crisis, is that people were using their their homes as their credit cards, right? And so the risk is you end up getting too much debt on your house, right? And the interest is a little bit higher, and after 10 years, that interest rate gets set, and then you're paying a much higher payment. And so you put yourself at risk of, at some point, not affording the payment, right? And then you end up in that sort of cycle that happened in 2008, because that's what happened in 2008. People had loans that set to a higher payment because they weren't aware of the type of loans they were getting. They were called adjustable rate mortgages. Some people were getting into what's called negative amortized loans. And after 3 to 5 years, that payment reset. House values didn't go up, they actually went down, and all of a sudden you're upside down on your house. So those are the sort of, it's good to have it for emergencies if you haven't done number one. It's a lot of good questions.
I don't know how to ask this question. When you have barely enough to live on, your groceries take so much of your money, you have your Social Security, and you have what other little income you have. You pay your tithes first, of course. What's left? I mean, what do you do? It's not enough to live on. I'm too old to get a job. I don't have an interest in getting a job at this point. But I know I'm not the only one that's in that position. So what's your recommendation?
Oh, budgeting, right? It's budgeting. It's, part of what we help clients or have clients think about is, kind of seeing where your money's going, right? Because sometimes we make choices that we're not aware of, that you need to kind of just put it on paper and look at it and go, okay, can I afford to do this or that? And, you know your basics, and then beyond your basics is the other stuff. And sometimes that's, people need to make sacrifice. I mean, we, again, going back to when my wife and I, we made a sacrifice to have our kids, for my wife to stay at home with the kids. Again, she got the short straw, but we kind of struggled for a few years, me working long hours and us having 3 kids and only having one income. So, but we sacrificed. Our kids are all, one of the things we did is we always saved money before we did stuff. It was, we didn't take vacations, we didn't go out as much, but because we did that, our kids, we were able to afford for our kids to go to school. Any other questions? Quite a bit.
As far as like one of my stocks, I don't have much in there, but one of my stocks, it was no longer a company type thing, and so my stock right now I have Charles Schwab, but then they put my money that was in that stock into another one. And I trusted them to do that. But I think basically you should be able to trust them to, if something happens to one of your stocks, that they invest it into something that's reliable or comparable.
Yeah, I mean, part of, we can't guarantee returns, right? I mean, we can't guarantee that it's all going to go up. That's why I like showing this graph, right? Yeah, and so, I mean, unfortunately, right, we as, and this is where, like I said earlier, right, I get clients calling me saying, I want to buy this stock, or I want to invest in Bitcoins, or I want to get out of the market. A lot of times, we are our worst enemy, right, of how we emotionally make decisions. And so we're not always going to get it right, but you got to kind of make adjustments. And hopefully, right, I don't know the companies that Schwab did for you, but not every company, is going to go up in value, but that's why it's important to diversify, like I showed you, and not only diversify, but think about, where are you in sort of this comfort level of risk, right? If you're not comfortable with risk, that's fine. Take less risk. But what effect does that have on everything else, right? So there's a balance between risk and what you're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And what's important is also to think about is rebalancing, right? Something we call rebalancing, because sometimes things go up and things go down, and we got to trim the things. It's like your garden. You trim, when you trim your garden, sometimes it grows better, right? But so you trim your profits, and then you buy low when things are low. Mm-hmm.
Whatever the number is. How do they go about investing? Pick up the phone and who do you call? How does that work?
Well, I would go to, as you think about $1,000, first make sure, before you get to that point, hopefully you've done the emergency fund and then done your 401k, right? Because when you look at your 401k, I would say 100% of your 401ks have the option of you to take low risk, high risk. Low risk, high risk. So hopefully you've done that, and then you are diversifying that. Once you get to that point, and you get to the point where you're at 7 or 8, and you go, I've done all of that, because your 401k has investments that you can diversify, right? Your emergency fund shouldn't be invested, but once you've gotten to the 7 and 8, you could try to do it yourself. That would be, some people use Schwab, Robinhood, another one is Fidelity, right? They have the ability for you to, when you call, you can call them and say, hey, I'm got money to invest, and they can help you with sort of think through your risk tolerance, because you got to be thinking about risk tolerance first. Like, where do you want to start with risk, right? Where are you in this spectrum with this money? Is this your emergency money, or is this your retirement money, right? And so you can say on a scale of 1 to 10, and they can help you select investment. The easy way to do it is to pick risk-based investments or age-based investments. And risk-based investments will be, I want to be conservative, I want to be moderate, I want to be risky. So when you call them, they can kind of guide you through low, moderate, or high. Or you can do what we call target dates, right? If it's 2026, I'm not going to touch this money until 2036, because this is a 10-year. They can put the money in something that has a 10-year horizon, and then as it gets closer, it'll move down that risk. So you can call one of those companies if you want to do it yourself. Or you have a conversation with someone like me who will take you and do kind of the way I'd like to think of it is a health analysis, but instead of health, it's a financial health analysis to kind of go, what is this $1,000 for? Are you doing 1 through 7, and right? And then we begin to have the conversation of like, what's the appropriate risk level for that investment? And then we begin to put kind of sort of thought into how that money should be invested. So there are brokers, and then there are fiduciaries. A fiduciary is someone like us, right? That we are taking, again, we are on looking out for you. We don't get paid commissions. We get a fee on the assets we manage, but we take you through that risk analysis. Think about your goals and objectives. Take the full picture and have no conflict of interest, because that's where we pay fee. A broker is someone just selling you something. It's just, if you call them and say, I want to buy a stock, they're going to give you a stock. But they may not take you through the full spectrum of planning and risk, and right, and they're just there for one transaction. And that's sort of the difference.
What's your thoughts on AI AI-generated investments. Two questions. That's the one question. The other question is, what sector do you see as being able to make money in the next 7 to 10 years?
Wow. What do I think of AI-generated investments?
I've heard of it. I'm not researched it at all, but I get like an advertisement saying, hey, let AI pick your stocks and all that. I mean, what's your thought on that?
I think it's out there, but it doesn't, AI is going to have its limitations. I mean, AI is going to be something. It is something now. I don't know, who's here trying to make a doctor's appointment? Right? I just did, and I mean, when I called, I could tell it was an AI driving me. I just needed to talk to a person, right? And so I think it's already creating a lot of efficiency. So that's a great theme of investing right now, okay? And it likely will make people a lot of money. So kind of answering both your questions here in a second at the same time, but it'll be similar to the internet. I mean, I'm connected to that without wires, right? I can get on that and talk to a client in Florida. I've been in New Zealand, logged in, and worked, right? I couldn't do that when I first started in the industry 30 years ago. Pretty amazing. But, right, the internet started in about 94, really kind of started to take off. It was amazing. People made, I don't know if you guys remember, the commercials of the bartender with a yacht outside of the bar. But he comes out and says, I just invested in a couple stocks and I bought a yacht. That was like in 99. What happened to the internet companies in 2000? A lot of people lost a lot of money, right? Because there was a lot of imposters, or not imposters, but there were winners and there were losers. I mean, I had a lot of calls of people going, why am I not in that stock or that stock or that? That's where I've, learned that when there's a hype, that it may be at its, now, that was 2000. How old's the cell phone? I mean, the iPhone. The iPhone, Apple, by the way, almost went bankrupt in like the early 2000s. No, 90s. Almost went bankrupt. It's one of the most valuable companies today, right? So AI is going to be, I think, in my opinion, similar. It's going to be huge, potentially. Winners and losers. It'll do things that we just don't know yet. We're beginning to use it a little bit. But I would say that you have to be very careful on investing in it because it can go this, that, and right, kind of like the internet. Kind of like the cars, kind of like the phone. I mean, cars put horse buggies out of business.
IPO.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a good investment?
If you can get your hands on it, potentially, right? Because it's going to be limited on what's going to be available, on how you get publicly traded. If you get it at the IPO price, you might get it after, right? After the market, but it'll likely shoot up. But again, right, and come down. Why can I get it? Oh, when? It's potentially going to go public. What we hear, it's sometime potentially June or July. And then it'll be traded and people will be able to buy it on the stock market. No, it's private. It's a private company, right? And the only people that have gotten it are venture capitalists that have put money into the investment, and But it's high, it's like that's a super high risk type of investment because it's not publicly traded. And so is it going to be big? Maybe, but they're all competition, right? Just like the internet. There's a lot of internet companies that went public that were supposed to be great that are no longer around. So it's just hard to know which one's going to make it. There's Blue Origin, another. Yeah. So, but yeah. They have not indicated what that's going to be.
Hello. Blue mic. Blue mic. Thank you. I'm just asking this for a friend. That I know.
I have a friend.
I know a guy. If somebody wanted to potentially take like a deferred compensation account that has some money in it and peel some of that money off to invest in an individual stock that could resemble SpaceX, how would they go about doing that?
Is that friend still working for the company that has a deferred comp?
Yes.
So unfortunately, you're kind of stuck with the deferred comp, or that person, friend, can't take, so in the deferred comp, our 401ks, employer-sponsored plans, because of fiduciary liability in the employer, they got to kind of limit how you invest it. Because they have a fiduciary duty and liability on how you invest it. So that's why the 401ks have, and we advise 401ks, the employers, that's why it has a limited sort of number of investments. And they go from low risk to high risk, so you kind of take the spectrum. The downside, I mean, you get a match, you get deferral, so there's a lot of positives, but the downside is you can't take it and put it somewhere else because they limit because of their liability on that. The way that you can eventually get money out of that is when you either leave the company and then you can roll it over to an IRA, and once it's in an IRA, you can invest in anything you want, right? But until then, it's sort of stuck with the employer, and you're getting all the other benefits of it.
Thank you.
Yep. I wouldn't quit. I would tell your friend, don't quit your job just so you can go do SpaceX.
You said you wouldn't pay it off your house if you can. You didn't recommend to pay it off your house if you can.
You said that
Somebody asked and you said you wouldn't pay it off if you could. My question is, if you can pay it off, because you're paying interest in.
Yeah.
And it's compound interest. You're not paying right now. The ongoing interest is about 6.5%. You'd rather invest that money in S&P 500 or?
Well, here's what you have to think about. Like, you got to do what's most comfortable for you, right? But there's some sort of rule of thumbs, right? If your choice is between putting money in a 401k that has a match or paying your mortgage off, first of all, right? Then you go, I'd rather get my match because that's automatic return. So that's one sort of, what do I, kind of between the two. Then it's if you're done working and don't have a 401k, then you go, my mortgage versus credit card debt. I'd rather you pay off your credit card debt before you pay your mortgage because credit card debt has a much higher interest rate than your mortgage. If you've done that, okay, then you go, do I pay off my mortgage or keep money in a savings account, if you will, right? If you have money in a savings account earning 0% and you got a mortgage, then yeah, you should probably pay your mortgage off. But you also need to have money for other things, because once you pay off the mortgage, and if you have an emergency or you need money for spending groceries, you can't sell a door of your house to get part of your cash. You could, but that's a higher interest rate potentially than your mortgage. Now, what I would say is, if you've got your investments earning 6% and your mortgage is 4%, I would not pay it off, because you're earning 2% more than the mortgage, right? So it kind of depends. But at the end of the day, if you got your spending covered and you've got money in the bank, and if that money is earning 0% and you're more comfortable paying off the mortgage than investing that money, then you should probably pay off your mortgage. It just kind of depends, right, on your situation and whether you pay off the mortgage or not. Because there's a series of questions you have to kind of ask your situation before you get to pay off the mortgage versus not paying off the mortgage. Does that make sense? Yep.
If a person is contributing to a 401k and, it's being matched, and they get terminated from their job, what happens with that money?
So that's always your money is always your money. Okay? The match might have a vesting schedule, meaning that the employer wants to keep you for, they're trying to make sure that they don't have to go hire somebody right away because they've spent money training you, right? And so that vesting schedule kind of keeps you there. But once you've reached their full vesting schedule, then it's typically 5 years, sometimes 6 years on what they put in. If you've been there longer than 6 years, if you've been there longer than 6 years, then the match and your money is yours. So if you've terminated, you can keep it there and just call their provider and take money as you need it, or you can put it in an IRA account. What I would not do is take it all out and put it in a taxable account, because you pay taxes on the whole thing all at once. And that could push you to a higher tax bracket right away, depending on that amount. But it's always yours. Does that help? They could take some of their money back if you've only been there like a year or two, if they have a vesting schedule. Yep. That's a good question. Yes?
So based on his question about the mortgage, so let's say you do have your savings and your match and everything, and you're looking towards retirement in 10 years. So high yield savings account is for whatever, 4.5, your mortgage is lower, and you're thinking about paying off your house in 10 years by the time you're 70. So it would be better to keep money into your savings and keep it growing, and instead of just adding that extra payment to your house so you can not have a mortgage and by the time you're retired, or does that make sense?
You max out your 401k, you got money in savings for emergencies, and you have extra money above that.
Yeah, so instead.
So this kind of going through the series of questions to get how I would kind of arrive at what the right thing to do is, okay? Right. It depends on your comfort level, because you could take that extra money that's available to you and invest it and get a higher return than your mortgage interest rate, okay? Potentially. If you're not comfortable with putting money in investments and putting at risk, and you're only earning 0.5% in your savings accounts, but you've done everything else, you got an emergency fund, you're maxing out your 401k, all those things, then yes, I would say you're better off paying extra payments on the mortgage, right? But if you're comfortable sort of putting some money to work, I tend to lean towards investing it if the mortgage rate is lower, because you can earn more. Not only can you earn more money, but then that money is also accessible to you when you get to retirement at age 70 that provides your income. Because your house, even though it's, it's where you're going to live, it's not going to provide you income. Follow me?
But you won't have a mortgage payment by the time you're on Social Security.
But
so-
if you've saved enough and you've got higher return on your investments, you'll have more money that can help you then pay for for those mortgage payments when you're not working. Right. And it's accessible to you, right? That's the key. Again, if it's not earning at least the same or higher than your mortgage interest rate, then you're better off paying it off. Hope that helps. Yes, we'll give you some cards on the way out. And David has my number.
I do.
It's a little red phone I keep in my office.
Yeah, right. I'm sure it is. So we're just about there. There's snacks and goodies outside before you go. It was a very good question about what do I do if I'm on a limited income and I don't have money to invest and I'm just trying to buy groceries and, I barely make it every month. And that's the kind of question that pastors get. Pastors get these questions because those are real questions. And so one of the things that we add to this is how can you take advantage of benefits offered by the county or the state, rarely the federal government, to supplement your needs, whether it's county benefits that might be available to lower income families, whether it's a SMUD discount for lower income individuals, and you go down, you fill out an application at SMUD and they charge you 10 or 20 or 30% less on your power, those kind of things. Whether it's food stamps, signing up, finding out if you're eligible because of your income. So benefits to supplement your needs based on social programs that are available based on income. And I think sometimes folks don't understand those benefits or what's available. And so one of the things we do is we look into it and help people. By the time some folks get to be older in age, it's not necessarily credit card debt that's killing a person. It's more limited income. The income is not sufficient to cover the expenses in this state. And that's a real problem. That's a real problem. So we have to take a look at, well, what are some alternatives that could be done in a person's situation? Whether it's sharing a dwelling, and where's the money going? And, is there a free cell phone available based on income? Those happen. Those kind of programs are available. So now you don't have to pay for your cell phone, that kind of thing. Anyways, can you stick around for 10 or 15 minutes?
Yeah.
So once we dismiss, why then, Eric, if you have a question for him, he'll be here for a little bit. Thank you so much, you and your wife, for coming and being with us. We didn't ask Araceli if she had wisdom.
She's the brain of the operation.
She's the brains of the operation.
I'm just the microphone. I'm just the...
All right. And so either of them can answer questions once we dismiss. Anything pressing you just had to ask, it just popped into your head right now. Anything like that? Otherwise, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've taken care of someone who was that way, and it's difficult. It's difficult, and the kids can't always, really. They're going to be needing breaks or
So is the question, how do you plan for that?
So what's available for...
The question is, how do you plan for when you can't care for yourself. It's basically long-term care, isn't it? Whether you have memory care needs or just physical needs and you can't care for yourself, right? Long-term health care. What's the silver bullet to finance long-term health care?
Well, this is part of the conversation we talk about clients with regards to paying off your mortgage a little bit, right? Again, it's nice to have your house paid off, no doubt. But, right, sometimes it's better not, because you might need that cash for long-term care. Because again, once you pay off your house, it's really hard to get money out of it. And if you have to, you can do a HELOC, but it might be at a higher rate. You could do another mortgage, but it might be at a higher rate, right? And so that becomes the last resort. But that's why I sometimes hesitate to have clients pay quickly. That's why having, savings and investing it and having it accessible is important. But having conversations with your kids, that's important, right? I mean, unfortunately, there's a generation where, at least my parents, may they rest in peace, but they would not talk to us about money or what their situation was. But it would have helped when I was taking care of them had we been able to have those conversations. And they just weren't ready. They didn't want to. And so, when they weren't able to communicate, I had to kind of figure it all out. Yes. Yep.
Because I think you'll find that's one of the best investments you can make.
Yeah, if you've got a family, right? I'll talk a little bit about life insurance, right? Especially if you have a family and you have a mortgage, you should have life insurance to cover your family. And I would start with the cheapest, which is term insurance. I mean, there's some life insurance agents that come around to start selling you whole life, and it's going to give you retirement and cash this and that. They tend to be more expensive because you're also investing money. But if you stop making payments to those life insurance because the payment was too much, then sometimes you throw that away. So that's why you start with term insurance, because it's the cheapest, because you want to be able to budget for everything else, but you want to protect your family, right? Especially when you're beginning to save. And so you should have that, and later on maybe put money over. But that's a good point.
The other thing is, always know what you're investing in, because I worked for the state for 27 years. Mm-hmm. I was paying into long-term care.
Oh.
Thank God there was a lawsuit.
Yeah.
And I had to look into that. Come to find out, I was able to take my money back because they said the money I had paid in would probably have only put me in a care home at the rate care homes are going for only 3 or 4 years. And I thought, okay, so I could be using that money or saving it, investing it in some other way for that time for later.
Okay. One more.
I think he had a question right
Two
there.
more.
Yeah, so if you're getting up to a time in your life when getting close to retirement, and you still have a mortgage, is it possible then to flip it, to do a reverse, so that now you're getting paid back from what your equity that you have in? Is a reverse mortgage something, since you said it's when you die, your kids are going to get whatever you have left?
I would not do a reverse mortgage unless you had to do a reverse mortgage. So
the bank owns the house.
Yeah,
Unless
but you
it's
have
paid
equity.
for-
You have equity
Right.
in the house. I
Right.
just would not accelerate payments on it, right? Like part of paying it off or not paying it off is hopefully if you're not paying it off, here's the risk of not paying it off too, right? That money, what I like to tell my dad used to say, it's burning a hole in your pants. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that term, right? Like, or you're burning a hole in your pocket, right? So if it's going to burn a hole in your pocket, pay your mortgage and pay it extra, because otherwise, if it's burning a hole, it's gone, right? The other thing I came up with this, and I don't know if I came up with it. I might have borrowed it for somebody, but money leaks. It leaks. If it's sitting in your checking account, it leaks. It'll find a way to get spent, right? Whether we are disciplined or not. So because of that, one of the things I've taught my kids is, I've set up a savings and a checking account for them. And I say, put money in your savings account, because if it's in your checking, it leaks. It'll find a way to get spent, right? So, going back to the mortgage thing real quick, right? If you're not disciplined to save it, put it away, have it earn more return, right? If you're not disciplined to do that, you should pay extra on your mortgage, okay? Because that's money. It's like a disciplined way of saving that sits in equity in your house, right? And then if you've saved, you've got enough to then keep making mortgage payments into retirement. Eventually, it'll get paid off. But you've got savings that'll help you fund that. The only time I would use a reverse mortgage is if you've run out of the savings that you have and you got nothing else. And the reason I say that is reverse mortgages are the most expensive, higher interest, highest fees way to get money out of your house. So that's why I wouldn't do a reverse mortgage. Okay. Right? It should be like the last thing you do.
This is not about retirement, but what would be a suggestion for the best way to save for your child's college fund or something like that?
They have something called 529 college funds. That's what my wife and I did for our kids, and we started with like $25, $50 a month when we first started. And what we did is we started before they were actually born, right? Because when she was pregnant, we'd go, we got to start saving. And so what 529 college funds, and each state sponsors them. California has one. It's called ScholarShare. The money is not deductible, so the money going in, it's after tax, but the money that it's invested, kind of like the 401ks, has a spectrum of risk. You can either go higher risk or lower risk, but they also have what they call enrollment age funds. That will be, if your son is 1, enrollment age will be 18 years out, because that's when theoretically they're going to enroll for college. So it kind of reduces risk over time. The benefit of doing those is that if it's used for qualified education, all that growth will come out tax-free. So you could put it in a savings account. That's another way to do it. But you're paying taxes on interest every year, right? And you saw how it reduces the return at the end. But it grows tax-free if it's used for education. Now, it has to be used for qualified education. That's K through 12. It doesn't have to be college. It could be. But it could also be like training, qualified training, technical schools. So it gives you lots of flexibility. If you're, most kids may not go to college. So that's the other thing that I get asked. What if my kid doesn't go to college? Well, if you have multiple kids, then you can transfer from one to the other. So that, if we had 3, hopefully one of them will be successful. Diversify.
Play the odds.
Increase my odds. But you can kind of, be able to use one. It's all based on one child, right? One beneficiary, but you can then, if one doesn't, you can use it on the other. And then you could also use it, one of the nice things that came with the tax law a couple years ago, that if there's funds in there that haven't been used for education, once they go to the workforce, you can convert that for them for retirement into a Roth IRA. So it's like multi-purpose, right? So that's what I would,
Sister Cindy,
I would not, sorry.
what was your question? Hang on, one more up here. Okay.
About term insurance.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Life insurance.
The life insurance, term insurance, people need to be aware that at the end of each term, the
Premium goes up.
premium really goes
Yeah.
up.
Right.
Ours went like from $90 a month to $5,000 or something. I mean, it was because of the difference in the age.
Yeah.
And it was a huge jump.
Yeah.
that it
So like if
wasn't
it's,
even
if it's a
feasible to
10-year
continue
term
on.
policy,
At the end of the 10
at year
years.
11, it could go up.
Yeah. at year
Correct. It
11,
will go up, but
it will
here's
go
the,
up.
yeah, and here's, maybe, let me address one thing and I'll come back to insurance. One thing that I would caution you with kids is setting up accounts for them called Unified Gift to Minors accounts. You can set those up, it's in the name of the child, you're the custodian. The cautionary note for those is that those, when they become 18, they have a legal right to request the money. And I would not trust my 18-year-old self with a pot of money, right? So limit what you put in those because they have that, the 5 to 9, they can't come to you and say, "Oh, you saved that for me for college," because you're the owner, you control it, you can switch beneficiaries, they don't have a legal right to come, right? So. Correct, for them, yep. Or use it for one of your other children that might need it for college if one doesn't need it, or doesn't need as much, right?
Or you can use it for their children.
Right.
So for the next generation.
What the way I treated it, and I will answer go back to the term insurance. What I told my kids that I've saved for college, this was a joke, but if you don't go to college, I'm getting a new car. And I don't care if I have to pay taxes. Because you don't control it, you can't come get it for me, you can't take me to court to get, but UTMA, they could, right? Because it's for their benefit. It's what they call a gift that's you can't take back. Term insurance, yes. After the term, the premiums go up. This is where you have to be careful on the purpose, right? Like the purpose for that cheap insurance for that term period is hopefully, again, money leaks. You get cheap insurance, you go, "Oh, I'm covered. I can go and take more vacations." Maybe. But you're getting cheap insurance so you can save during that term so that as your family gets older, you're also saving. So by the time you end the term, you've hopefully saved enough to cover, right, emergencies and retirement and your family that's left behind.
Also, while the children are home.
Yeah, exactly.
Your life insurance is
Yep,
there.
it's there to
And
cover.
once they're gone, it's not as critical.
Yeah, exactly. You pay your debts down.
Okay, let's say thank you very much for coming, Eric.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Sally. And we're just going to have a word of prayer. Let's stand up, and as I say, there's something to eat on your way out, by all means. And if you have a question for him, he'll be staying behind a little bit.